Derek, let's talk about some of the potential transfer possibilities coming in. First, a big one came off the board. Brandon Murray to Georgetown. Yeah, he's going to the school that just lost 21 straight games and a coach that should definitely be on the hot seat in Patrick Ewing. I can't believe how much of a dumpster fire it's been under him. But Kevin Nickelberry, the former LSU assistant, goes there. Brandon Murray follows him. Not too big of a surprise. I mean, that kind of seemed lined up. But what's that mean for Illinois? Because I got the feeling, Derek, like Brandon Murray was their number one target.
I think he was. I think even when you consider Terrence Shannon as a guy that is on NBA radars, at least, and thought to be someone that could be a draft pick if he comes back and continues to develop, that Brandon Murray, while he didn't shoot the three as well as Terrence this past year, and maybe isn't even as polished as him quite yet, just what he did as a freshman and who he can develop into was a guy that they highlighted as their top guy in the portal, and was thought to be a very, very good two-way player with size that could progress as a three-point shooter. Thought that he could, as he goes along, be a knockdown shooter from three, do some things off the dribble, and really defend. And they were in the Final Three, and they spent 2 of their days in the evaluation period this past weekend back on campus hosting him for an official. He goes to Tennessee, he goes to Illinois, he goes to Georgetown. And yeah, Georgetown, because of Nickelberry, was pointed to right when he hit the portal of, okay, that's a likely destination. Now, he had to make a decision in terms of what that situation around him was going to look like. And I mean, he's going to have as we look at it right now, he's going to have plenty of shots. He might be the number one player on Georgetown. I don't know how many games they're going to win. He is closer to home, being a Baltimore native, about an hour away from DC. So, and playing for a coach that he's very familiar with. But Illinois was trying to sell winning, opportunity they certainly have, and then NIL potential too for a program that's more relevant, and for alumni base and fan base that's very bought in on supporting their team, their players, and making sure that NIL is a very good avenue for guys to make money.
I would say that the next two guys that we think about, Terrence Shannon, Courtney Ramey, two guys who are kind of what composite, I would say, consensus, top 10 transfer prospects out there. I think Ramey would fit this team incredibly well. Like Terrence Shannon is certainly a talent, long, athletic, can shoot the three, from Chicago, makes a lot of sense. But you pair Courtney Ramey with that young backcourt. I just think it makes all the sense in the world. But any feeling on those, Derek?
I love the Ramey fit too, as long as he understands and is on the same page in terms of role. I think that, last year getting pulled off the ball, not that he didn't play with the ball in his hands a decent amount, just a lot less than he had prior to that when they brought in Marcus Carr and they brought in Devin Askew. Of course, with the change with Chris Beard, but a great primary defender, a guy you can look at who's the best option in whatever opponent's backcourt. Throw Ramey on there. I mean, he defended the heck out of Ochai Agbaji in a matchup at Kansas late in the year where Agbaji goes 1 for 11 from the field, and Ramey got a lot of credit for that, and can defend on the ball and can also be a facilitator. Because I look at Clark and Epps as score first guys, and I don't think that Ramey has to be your primary option offensively in terms of getting his own shot. I think he can get guys involved. I think that you can play him with an Epps, play him with a Clark. I think that I like the dynamic and the possibility of your starting backcourt being Ramey, Clark, and Melendez, and then go on to the line, Hawkins and Kofi. That'd be a pretty darn good group. And even if it is Clark making a play off the bounce, which he's very good at, Ramey was a top level catch and shoot guy. You look at some of his numbers, and he was in the 90th plus percentile last 2 years in catch and shoot three. So I think he makes a ton of sense, as long as, and I'm not really worried about minutes either. I think he'd play a bunch of minutes in that backcourt. I love that he's a gritty competitor. I think he could be a leader in that backcourt. That would be important. Shannon, you love the explosiveness. He might be the most explosive player in the portal, and someone that has improved a lot as a three-point shooter. We know he's a slasher. We know he can defend. I think transition game, and Brad talked yesterday about wanting to play faster and really being run and gun next year. I think that Shannon helps you do that, but Ramey to me makes a lot of sense. Although I'm curious in your thoughts, I was a little, not that Brad has always showed his hand to us, but yeah. I asked him, is a veteran ball handler a need? And he wasn't really that committal. He was kind of non-committal on that.
Yeah, I think he wants his young guys to have it. But I mean, showing interest in Ramey, some of the guys, like, it feels like they'd love to hand the ball to Sky and to Jaden Epps. And I think that'd be fine. And I think they're cool with dealing with some of the pressure. But there's not a lot of pressure on these guys to to be a 4 or 3 seed next year. It's just make the tournament, have an extended run. Everybody's happy. But Courtney Ramey's different because Courtney Ramey can play the 2, right? Like he's such a good defender. He's a veteran, as you said, and he can play off of Epps. He can play off of Clark. So I just think he makes a lot of sense, but they certainly have shown a lot of interest in 2 guards. Derek, it feels like that's the number 1 position they're kind of focused on. And the moment this guy hit the portal, I texted you, Nahiem Alleyne from Virginia Tech. Of course, anybody that the staff has connections to makes sense, but he hits threes at about a 38% clip. He defends fairly well. And it seems like he defended even better the year before, but Chester Frazier knows him. Chester Frazier coached him at Virginia Tech, not a star, but let's be honest. If you don't get Ramey or Shannon, this team just needs veteran guards. They just need somebody you can count on. And Nahiem Alleyne, kind of a 3-and-D guy, but he's a guy that I think you'd feel comfortable sliding in as a starter and really helping this young backcourt and kind of supplement all your other pieces.
Yeah, 3 years of high major experience, 2 years as a starter. This past year, put up 10 a game, shot the 3 about 38%. He's 6'4" lefty that could fit in that backcourt as a shooter. Could also be a defensive piece that can mix in there. And Chester Frazier is very familiar with him. I was even going back and reading an article written by Chris Ash for our Virginia Tech site, who said that he listed Alleyne. I was going to say his last name, Alleyne, is one of the guys that Chester recruited as a primary recruiter. So not only that, as he coached him, he was the guy that brought him into Virginia Tech. So that certainly makes a lot of sense.
And sometimes when these guys enter the portal, they kind of have an idea, right? Like, and I would imagine Chester would be one of the first ones to reach out. Andrew Slater reported Illinois did reach out, and I would imagine Illinois is going to be a player there. I mean, this is speculation, but it all just kind of lines up, right?
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense. And for them already to be in the mix, and they were listed towards the top. Slater, I think when he puts out those long lists of interests, he kind of understands who he's putting towards the top there as contenders. Now he's from Georgia, so I know that Georgia and Georgia Tech were on there. Illinois was then listed towards the top as well. But it makes a lot of sense in terms of need, veteran, and then the connection to Chester. That would be a pretty decent ad, I would think.
Another guy I think is realistic, maybe not your top option, but I want to mention him because we got our sights set on like the best possible guys, but Gerard Lucas out of Oregon State, this is a guy who averaged 12, 13 points a game in the Pac-12. Now he didn't do much else. And I texted you, I go, I think this is taller Alfonso Plummer, but that can still be a really good piece because again, you need some proven players and he's 6'3". He's a big body, a big part of what they did making the Elite Eight. Then they go 3-28. It's one of the crazier turnarounds, the negative way I've seen, but still a guy that can make sense and would be gettable. But one more guy I want to bring up, Derek, is Ben Vander. Man, I didn't know his name would come back up after dropping 20 and almost beating Illinois along with Jason Preston when we were part of like 100 people who were actually there to see it. The third game of that season in 2021. Very good stretch 4, really skilled, pretty good defensively as well, at least at his level. But what do you make of the interest in Ben Vander?
It's a good player. That was a good Ohio team that I liked watching a lot, and they pulled the upset in the first round over Virginia. It's interesting because Virginia is one of the schools, along with Wisconsin, that's thought to be big players there because he's from Wisconsin. His dad played with Tony Bennett at Green Bay way back in the early 90s, so some connections there. But in terms of Illinois' interest, he makes sense as a shooter, a skilled forward that offensively can bring a lot of different things to the table. I think you can shoot a 3, shoot the mid-range, you can post guys up. He's a good passer too. I think that as someone, especially in the world where Kofi doesn't come back, maybe as a front court piece that can pull out to the perimeter and guards can cut and come off screens and he can make decisions. He could fit into that mix. I think defensively, making the jump up to the Big Ten level, especially if he's going to play anywhere outside the 4. I think he's a natural fit at the 4, 6'8", 230, 235. But can he play the 5? I don't think so in terms of guarding most 5s. Can he play the 3? I don't know if he moves quite as well for some athletic wings that we see, but he would be a very intriguing piece. He's very talented. Offensively, there's a lot to like there. And someone that if he were to buy into being in the mix with a Coleman Hawkins, Ty Rodgers type deal at those forward spots, I'd certainly like that.
I think he makes a lot of sense if Kofi doesn't come back. Like, I think he'd be interested too. If Kofi comes back, it might be harder to sell him. Plus, can he play the three? I'm not quite sure. And then how do you separate those minutes? But it kind of brings me to this there. He's a Wisconsin native. Wisconsin certainly would make a lot of sense for him as well. Virginia, as you said, makes a lot of sense. But it's kind of Illinois in these next 10 days, kind of setting themselves up to kind of go parallel tracks, right? Like, if you can search for these big men, and they've reached out to Manny Bates, some other big men. I think Morris Odesi was another one. You can look at these stretch fours or threes that can make a lot of sense if you don't have Kofi, guys who can make shots once the defense collapses. That's kind of what they seem to be doing over this next week is, all right, if Kofi comes back, we go on this route. If Kofi doesn't come back, we go on this route. Because it does seem like they'd want maybe another front course piece, whether that's a 3 or a 4.
Yes. And I know that, I mean, if Kofi doesn't come back, we might be having more conversations about a Vander Plas or even a Bryce Hopkins or a Dawson Garcia that's in the transfer portal once again. And Illinois thought they were getting him until kind of a change in the 11th hour last summer, and he goes to North Carolina. I know that Minnesota, being that's his home state, and have a pull there to try to get him in the Big Ten, but just for a different school. But I think that you could sell a 4 who could play a significant role if Kofi's not there, because Hawkins can slide and play a decent amount of 5. Not, I don't know if he'd be your starting 5. Maybe it'd be Danja and then Hawkins playing the 4, but those would be your 2 primary 5s. Probably not that I think Benjamin Bossman's Verdonk would still be in the mix. So without Kofi, there would be kind of that consideration of, do we add a backup 5 or do we add maybe an impact 4 that can then play a decent amount at that spot, and then we'll play Hawkins a decent amount at the 5. So and yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you prepare either way? And the fact that you don't have to, I mean, last year there were some 5 men that they wanted to go after. They showed preliminary interest in, but it was like, we're not going to have an answer until June, July. So it was hard for Illinois really to cover. I mean, they got Omar Payne, but there were some other guys that maybe were more of a sure thing in terms of the starting 5 man that they couldn't really press for. So now that the answer is going to be relatively soon, they can position themselves to not keep guys on the hook for too long, and just make sure that they're good either way.